we are going to talk about MindWar and gang stalking. Some people don't want that information put out there, but we will prevail. And by hook or by crook, I will make sure that you get this information. Now, everyone knows about gangs. We all know about gangs, inner city ones, Crips and Bloods, MS-13, and so on. And everyone has heard about stalking and the various types, the lonely or psychopathic person who stalks somebody else, or the middle or high school type of cyber stalking online, or vice versa. But gang stalking that we're going to talk about today is very much more sinister than any and all of that put together. Organized stalking, gang stalking or vigilante stalking, and of course, harassment under the color of law. Well, the best way to explain this phenomenon is to let you all hear it straight from the mouth of an individual who has experienced this personally. I am going to start reading from a document entitled State-Sponsored Terror Campaigns, The Hidden Evil by Mark Rich. Mr. Rich says, what is it? Organized stalking is a well-organized occult form of covert harassment used against an individual. It is done by large groups of people who systematically and repeatedly harass individuals. The people who participate are usually under the impression that they need to keep an eye on a targeted person or drive them out of town for wrongdoings. It often encompasses the use of directed energy weapons, such as microwave harassment. This can be a for-hire organized harassment service. These groups usually operate throughout North America and Europe and exhibit cult-like characteristics. They usually have local numbers ranging in the hundreds. This has also been cause stalking, gang stalking, community-based harassment, organized vigilante stalking, vengeance stalking, terrorist stalking, revenge stalking, covert action, state-sponsored harassment, microwave harassment, microwave mind control, etc. All of these labels explain the same basic phenomenon. Now, quoting from a book entitled The New Satanists by Linda Blood, she says, organized vigilante stalking is an occult form of terror/mind control used against an individual in a malicious attempt to reduce the quality of a person's life so that they will have a nervous breakdown, become incarcerated or institutionalized, experience constant mental, emotional, or physical pain, become homeless, and or commit suicide. It is done using well-orchestrated accusations, lies, rumors, bogus investigations, setups, framing, intimidation, overt or covert threats, vandalism, thefts, sabotage, torture, humiliation, emotional terror, directed energy weapons, and general harassment. It is a ganging up by members of the community who follow an organizer and participate in a systematic and ritualistic persecution of an individual. Organized stalking is a destructive criminal program built on deception that exists to serve the intentions of a few who are aware of its true agenda, end quote. Now, Linda Blood had her own experience. She knows how freaky these people are and where they are mentally coming from. Now, it's important to note that not all organized gang or vigilante stalking is performed by Satanists, as we shall learn. Going back to the document entitled State-Sponsored Terror Campaigns, The Hidden Evil by Mark M. Rich, he says, this hate crime appears to be a combination of early mind control and harassment programs such as COINTELPRO and MKUltra, as well as gang stalking tactics used by the KKK. The objective is to create so much pain in the environment of the person that they are driven to homelessness or suicide. It is used to isolate and remove economical and social support structures and therefore destabilize a person's life with the intent to drive them to suicide. Basically, it's forever. They never leave you alone. You are followed out of the country and there's no way to get away from it. Although it would appear that this is a new phenomenon, it is not. Many tyrannical regimes throughout history have used local harassment gangs to neutralize dissent. Gang stalking is simply another manifestation of this pattern. Because most counseling centers and therapists deny the existence of these groups, it is impossible to prove just how many cases of depression, anxiety, miscarriage, stillbirth, suicides, and people going postal are caused by them. This is further complicated since many people are unaware that they are hosts to this type of parasite. The methods reportedly employed in these harassment campaigns, the only difference is that now now, electronic harassment and experimentation also appear to be more blatantly involved. The psychological aspect of gang stalking is identical to mobbing. It has the same group dynamics. For this reason, I'll make references to mobbing throughout this document. I'll also explain these shared dynamics later in the document. The mobbing phenomenon has been well documented and studied in other countries for years. However, it is only now beginning to receive attention in North America. When and this is of course Mr. Rich speaking here, I'll talk about mobbing. I'm not talking about flash mobbing where hundreds of strangers will communicate via cell phone or email to meet at a public place and perform some type of synchronized act as reported by CNN and other mainstream media. No. The mobbing I'm referring to is committed by multiple people using subtle but repeated harassment, which takes place in the workplace and is difficult to prove. It is used to kick a person out of the workplace or even the workforce while leaving little trace. The logic is that it is less of a liability for the organization if you voluntarily leave than if they fire you. In addition, some organizations with sadistic intentions enjoy it as a form of sport harassment as well, so their primary intent might not be to drive a person out of the workforce. For an excellent explanation of how groups of people will not only turn against an individual, but will also participate in the repeated harassment and ultimate destruction of an individual to ensure their own survival, read the book called Mobbing. When researching the mobbing phenomenon, the authors discovered that it also took place out in the community. However, when this type of organized harassment occurs out in public, many of those who are aware of it choose to refer to it as gang stalking and the labels previously mentioned. Now, you can think of mobbing as small-scale gang stalking, which takes place indoors. Quoting from a book entitled Mobbing, Emotional Abuse in the American Workplace by Elliot Schwartz, says, until evil is named, it cannot be addressed. This book names mobbing a common and bloodless form of workplace mayhem. An insidious and powerful subculture is thriving in the American workplace. Every day, in all sorts of workplaces, mean-spirited mobs are forcing capable, hardworking employees to flee from jobs they love. The mobs intentionally target and ultimately destroy innocent individuals, end quote. Organized stalking is mobbing, which takes place out in the community and is a much wider in scope. Mobbing is also contained within an organized stalking program for targeted people who are actually employed. Some of those who experience mobbing may also be targeted for gang stalking, although they might not be aware of it. Mobbing and organized stalking both employ repeated acts of emotional and psychological violence. If you are experiencing mobbing and are actively seeking employment, you may experience character assassination, which will prevent you from landing another job. If you are also being gang stalked, rumors may be spread about you in the community. These smear tactics work very well. If you are being mobbed and think you're having job opportunities trashed, you are probably correct.
Gang stalking is alive in this country, and the politicians are denying that it exists.
There are literally thousands of websites providing information about these crimes.
Sites that explain the truth about what's going on.
These are many sites that you should go and check out. Go to gangstalkingworld.com, go to topcovertwar.com, go to YouTube and check out Organized Stalking Informers.
Wake up!
Are you being stalked, harassed, and your privacy violated? Has your work and personal life been sabotaged or ruined and you don't know why? Are you experiencing trouble with your phone, email, and internet services? Are you being denied help from governing and city officials? You are not alone.
As many as one person per 100 are being targeted in North America.
Same tactics get thrown on this list and
technological and community-based harassment. Gang stalking, or group stalking, groups of people stalking individuals.
street harassment.
This is exactly what is happening to me.
All over the world, people are sick of being subjected to organized gang stalking. Across the globe, people are watching in communities and neighborhoods. People watching. People listening. People sharing information. People filming individuals and vehicles, documenting, exposing organized harassment activities. Organized gang stalking and community harassment is a crime. There is nothing lawful about organized gang stalking and community harassment. It doesn't matter who's doing it or what their profession may be. All across America, people have decided enough is enough. The targeted are now targeting. People have decided it's time to crack the whip on organized gang stalking and community harassment. We will be watching, recording, exposing, and punishing those involved. Do your part to destroy organized gang stalking today. For more information, visit Organized Stalking Informers on YouTube at www.youtube.com/OSINFORMERS.
It's not necessary for mobbing to precede gang stalking campaigns, but some targeted people have reported they believe their harassment began as mobbing. Mr. Rich says it seems that mobbing may be done as a part of a strategy to promote helplessness and set the stage for poverty if you're also going to be targeted for gang stalking. Mobbing is also an unwritten method used to get rid of people that the organization does not want to terminate and deliver a severance package to. In some cases, the only alternative is to leave with no job lined up. According to the book Mobbing, mobbing sometimes continues even after a person has left an organization. If you will also be targeted for gang stalking, you will most probably be blacklisted at that point as well. Unemployment will bring about your demise much quicker and induce hopelessness, which is one objective of gang stalking. The mechanism for mobbing is already in place in some corporations, as is the organized stalking program on an international level. Just because someone is targeted for mobbing does not necessarily mean they will also be gang stalked. Mobbing may just be isolated to the work environment. Now, the process of organized stalking and mobbing seems to work best when the target is unaware or in denial that they are being targeted. I call it a process because it seems to have a progression from the start. The more conscious you are of the progression, the better you will be able to survive it. While there are many similarities regarding the tactics people experience, there are sometimes differences with who they believe is responsible for their harassment. Each case is different. However, many targets believe that this type of systematic harassment cannot occur with the state without the state condoning it. So this document focuses primarily on state-sanctioned type of terrorism, mainly terrorism carried out by a federal agency, which is also the origin, or carried out by a federal agency on behalf of a corporation, an individual, or a group with connections. One reason that these stalking groups are successful is because they operate in secrecy. The leaders are counting on you not being able to face the horror of this epidemic. When you make someone aware of organized stalking, they are presented with a choice. They can believe you, or they can deny that it exists. Some people don't have the constitution to acknowledge insanity of this magnitude. This type of denial is probably an unconscious protection mechanism that activates in order to prevent a nervous breakdown. Organized vigilante stalking is an enterprise run by field leaders who rally groups which contain hundreds of people to repeatedly harass individuals with the intent to drive them to suicide. I believe that most federal law enforcement officers do not engage in harassing citizens. Some of them may be aware of the destructive activities taking place within their agency, but since it is condoned from higher up, there is not much they can do. Those familiar with gang stalking may explain the main components of this phenomenon in a different manner, but I have broken it down to three major components. The three basic components are: number one, sponsorship and support that provides funding and uses its influence to allow the harassment to take place. Number two, groups of individuals that engage in cause stalking. Number three, directed energy weapons, or DEW, harassment. The funding of some of these terrorist stalking campaigns come from corporations who use them to stalk enemies or potential enemies. The sponsorship and influence may originate from the same sources, such as a federal agency. Apparently, the sponsorship may also come from a corporation, a group, or an individual that uses, which is paid for, the influence of a federal agency. These field supervisors basically use their resources and influence as an engine to carry out these harassment campaigns. The people who carry out contracts for organized stalking represent the interests of people who supply their funding. Well, of course, in the past, some of these federal agencies have subsidized, directed, and protected many of these types of vigilante groups. They're able to recruit neighbors, friends, and family of the target to participate in the harassment. This is done by using lies, threats, blackmail, and bribery. During COINTELPRO, these agencies included neighbors, friends, families, employers, landlords, religious organizations, and their bogus investigations, i.e. harassment campaigns. Now, I would like to also put out here that it's not just those people, but also cable installers, plumbers, any kind of service personnel that you may hire that come into your house can also be a part of this. So keep that in mind also. He continues by saying contracts are put out on targets in retired military, law enforcement, sheriff, and other paramilitary personnel place bids on these contracts. The structure resembles a compartmentalized pyramid. It consists of followers who participate in harassment, the leaders or field supervisors who corral them, and financial support at the top of the structure. At the bottom of the structure, the cause outwardly appears constructive. It offers fellowship to people who participate, and most believe that their cause serves a higher purpose. The compartmentalized pyramid system keeps the organizers and their financiers shielded from group activity. It also keeps the community members at the bottom of the structure ignorant as to the group's true intentions. The identity of the leaders of these groups may not be known to group members for reasons of national security. With federal influence, the passing of the USA Patriot Act, unlimited resources, and a vast pool of groups to draw from, these harassment campaigns can be devastating. They are also growing rapidly. The closest thing to this type of organized harassment has been COINTELPRO, but this is different. This new COINTELPRO is much more intense. Some journalists believe that COINTELPRO is back due to the loosening of laws that prevented this type of abuse, end quote. Well, the question, of course, we have to ask ourselves is why? Okay, well, there are actually several reasons. Number one, the U.S. military has all these nifty psychotronic and technotronic weapons that they need to test out. And they choose individual citizens to test them out upon. And individuals will never be believed by counselors or sometimes even families that they're being stalked or harassed by unnamed persons. We're talking about the reasons why people are gang stalked. I mean, why would anybody do this to another person? Well, we talked about the U.S. military needs to test out their weapons. Now, they have chosen just random people to see what will happen, and they choose specific people to see how far they can ruin this person's life and what works and what doesn't. We're going to talk about vigilantism and abuse of power reasons. And if you upset somebody in the power structure, well, they can have this done to you, as we mentioned before. They can have a contract put out on you, and certain people will bid on that contract. You make somebody angry, then you have the vigilantism aspect. Other people who are experiencing gang stalking can know that, no, you're not alone. I mean, this happens. It is beyond just the whisper campaigns, which is, the slander around the community. It's good to, for everyone out there to know that you are not alone. If you have these bizarre and disturbing things happening to you, it's not necessarily random. I mean, everybody has bad experiences during the day, from day to day, and that doesn't mean that you are being gang stalked. But if these things are happening with a pattern, start documenting them, and there may be a reason that you don't even know about. If you, with the understanding you have acquired today, realize that these things are happening to you, please know right now that you are not crazy, you are not insane, and you are not alone in this. I have looked up some resources for people who are being subjected to this. Okay, there are groups online you can go to in order to see that the same things are happening to you are happening to other people. Okay, and learn how other people have learned to cope. That is, to stay sane through all of this. We all need to learn as much as we can about both the electronic harassment and the physical harassment techniques. Again, the main thing is everybody needs to do their own research. And I know that the information that I have presented today is highly disturbing, but we need to know this, okay? There are a lot of things going on in the world that we would rather not look at. You can learn for yourself. And once you learn, you know, knowledge is power.